Professor Alastair Lowell was not a man prone to excitement. His world was the quiet, dust-moted realm of comparative linguistics at Miskatonic University, a universe bounded by leather-bound lexicons and crumbling papyri. Yet, when the crate arrived from the estate sale of the reclusive anthropologist Silas Thorne, unearthed from the damp cellar of his crumbling Salem manse, Lowell felt a tremor unlike any academic thrill. Inside, nestled in moth-eaten velvet, lay the Ecdysis Libram. It wasn't grand, roughly the size of a ledger, bound in a leather that felt disturbingly supple, like cured skin stretched too thin. Its surface was unadorned, save for a single, complex sigil pressed deep into the cover, a spiraling knot of angles that seemed to writhe subtly if stared at too long. The pages were a thick, fibrous parchment, unnaturally smooth and cool to the touch, and the script, Lowell's initial elation curdled into profound unease. It wasn't any language catalogued in his vast mental library, not Aklo nor Relahian, nor even the fragmented whispers of Hyperborean dialects. This was something other. The glyphs weren't merely written, they seemed grown onto the page, organic filaments of ink that pulsed with a faint, sickly luminescence under the library's fluorescent lights. They defied linear reading, swirling into patterns that suggested multidimensional structures, geometries that hurt the eyes and scraped against the mind's natural order. Lowell, of course, was captivated. The sheer, alien novelty overrode his instinctive dread. He secured the Libram in his private study, a cluttered sanctuary smelling of pipe smoke and old paper. Nights bled into days as he hunched over the book, magnifying glass in hand, notebooks filling with frantic, increasingly incoherent scribbles. He felt like a man trying to decipher the meaning of a spiderweb by studying a single strand while ignoring the vast, predatory architect lurking unseen. The first changes were subtle. Dreams, once mundane anxieties about misplaced footnotes, became terrifyingly vivid. He'd find himself adrift in a void where colossal, non-Euclidean shapes drifted like icebergs in a black sea. Jagged angles pierced the darkness, emitting low, subsonic hums that vibrated his very bones. He'd glimpse vast, membranous wings blotting out impossible constellations, or feel the cold, chitinous brush of something segmented and immense passing just beyond perception. He'd wake, gasping, the taste of ozone and decay thick on his tongue, the sigil from the Libram burning behind his eyelids. Then came the coincidences. Walking home beneath the gnarled elms of Arkham's older districts, the shadows between the trees seemed deeper, more substantial. He'd catch impossible movements at the periphery of his vision, fleeting suggestions of multi-jointed limbs retracting into brickwork, or the wet gleam of an eye too large and compound for any known creature, vanishing into a rain gutter. The city's ambient sounds, the rumble of traffic, distant sirens, began to resolve into disturbing patterns, whispers of a language that echoed the Libram's impossible script. He heard his name hissed on the wind when no one was there, spoken in a voice like grinding stone. His physicality began to revolt. His skin, always pale, took on a peculiar translucence, the blue tracery of veins beneath seeming unnaturally prominent, almost like the ink filaments on the Libram's pages. A chronic dryness plagued him, a thirst no amount of water could quench. His joints ached with a deep, rheumatic cold, cracking with sounds like snapping twigs. He developed an aversion to sunlight. It felt abrasive, searing his sensitive skin. Mirrors became objects of dread. His reflection seemed off. His eyes, once a mild blue, now held a strange yellowish cast in certain lights, and his pupils sometimes appeared unnervingly elongated, like a cat's caught in a flash. The lines on his face deepened, but not with age. They looked etched, deliberate, like cracks forming in drying mud. The Libram itself became more demanding. It no longer sat passively on his desk. He'd enter his study to find it open to a page he hadn't been studying, the glyphs shimmering with a faint internal light. The air around it grew thick and cold, smelling of wet earth and ozone. Lowell, driven by a compulsion he couldn't name and a terror he couldn't articulate, felt drawn back to it. He had to understand. The whispers in the wind grew louder, more insistent, forming words in that impossible language. They spoke of the unfolding, of the shedding of the false skin, of the architects beyond the angles. One rain-lashed night, hunched over the Libram under the green glow of his desk lamp, Lowell experienced a breakthrough, or perhaps a breakdown. The swirling glyphs on the page didn't just resolve into meaning, they unfolded. His perception seemed to peel back layers of mundane reality. He saw not just the ink, but the intent woven into it, the blueprint of a trans-dimensional process. The Libram wasn't merely a book. It was a catalyst, a set of instructions for a metamorphosis not of the body, but of the very fabric of one's existence within the cosmos. He understood ecdysis. It meant molting, the shedding of the limited mammalian form. The revelation wasn't intellectual, it was cellular, a violation etched directly onto his nervous system. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound that startled even him, but the sound seemed muffled, absorbed by the thickening air in the room. He looked down at his hands. The skin on the back was taut, almost shiny, the blue veins beneath pulsing with a light that mirrored the Libram's pages. He scratched at it instinctively, and a long strip peeled away like wet parchment, revealing not muscle and bone, but a layer of something smooth, chitinous, and dark beneath. Panic, pure and animal, surged through him. He slammed the Libram shut, the thud echoing like a coffin lid in the silent room. He stumbled back, clutching his injured hand. The strip of shed skin lay on the floor, shriveling rapidly into a gray, powdery ash. The thing beneath, cool, hard, segmented, felt utterly alien. He wrapped it hastily in a handkerchief, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He tried to burn the Libram the next morning. He built a fire in his small hearth, the flames dancing merrily. But when he threw the book in, the flames recoiled. They didn't extinguish. They bent around it, flowing over the supple leather without scorching it, like water over oiled stone. The sigil on the cover glowed with a fierce emerald light. A low hum filled the room, vibrating the floorboards and rattling Lowell's teeth. He snatched the book back, hissing as the cool leather seared his already changed hand. It was futile. The Libram was inextricably part of him now. The transformation accelerated. The shedding wasn't confined to his hands. Patches of skin on his neck, his chest peeled away with increasing frequency, revealing more of the dark, segmented carapace beneath. His bones ached constantly, feeling brittle yet straining against some internal pressure. His vision blurred and refocused erratically, sometimes seeing the mundane world, other times perceiving the terrifying angles and geometries that underpinned it, the stark, alien skeleton of reality. The whispers were constant now, a chorus of cold, indifferent voices speaking directly into his mind, guiding him, praising his progress towards the true form. He became a prisoner in his own home. The mirrors were covered, the windows shuttered against a sun that now felt like liquid fire. Food tasted like ashes. His body craved something else, something he dared not contemplate. He spent hours staring at the Libram, not reading, but communing. The glyphs pulsed in time with his own faltering heartbeat. He began sketching in his notebooks, not words, but complex, multi-dimensional schematics. designs for structures that defied gravity and Euclidean space, blueprints whispered by the voices. His final journal entry was a testament to unraveling sanity. October 27th. The shedding is constant now. It doesn't hurt. It feels right. Like removing a suffocating mask. The false skin was a prison. I see the angles clearly. The architects. They are vast. Not gods. Beyond gods. Concepts given form in geometries we cannot bear. They built this reality. A crude prototype. A chrysalis stage. The Libram. It is the key to the next phase. To mold this crude universe. To join them in the spaces between the angles. The whispers sing of the great unfolding. My form. It itches within this shell. The carapace is hardening. My eyes. They see the layers. The fragile walls of this world. I must prepare. The final ecdysis approaches. The shedding of this world skin. I will be unfinished, but I will be closer. Closer to the vast, cold truth. Lowell is shedding. Only the vessel remains. The vessel for the unfolding. The knocking started 3 days later. Persistent, rhythmic, shaking the very frame of his front door. Not human knuckles, something harder, more numerous. Tap, 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 scritch tap. Lowell, huddled in his study amidst piles of shed skin dust and notebooks filled with insane geometries, didn't answer. The Libram lay open on his desk, its glyphs blazing with a feverish internal light that cast long, impossible shadows on the walls. Shadows that moved independently, stretching and contracting like breathing things. The knocking ceased. An unnatural silence descended, thick and heavy, pressing in on the house. Then, the sound of splintering wood. Not a crash, but a slow, deliberate unraveling of the doorframe. Lowell didn't turn. His body was mostly carapace now, a dark, segmented thing hunched in the chair. His human face was almost entirely shed, only a few ragged strips of pale skin clinging around his jaw, revealing glimpses of the smooth, chitinous darkness beneath. His eyes, fully elongated pupils swimming in pools of jaundiced yellow, were fixed not on the door, but on the writhing patterns within the Libram. Shapes filled the doorway. Not men, not creatures easily described. They were angles given form. Limbs of impossible length and jointing, bodies suggesting multiple axes of symmetry intersecting in ways that strained the mind. Their surfaces were a shifting mosaic of dark, iridescent chitin and patches of the same fibrous parchment-like material as the Libram. They had no discernible faces, only clusters of sensory organs that glowed with the same sickly light as the book's glyphs. They moved with a terrifying fluid grace, flowing into the room rather than walking, their multi-jointed limbs folding and unfolding silently. Shapes filled the doorway, not men, not creatures easily described. They were angles given form, limbs of impossible length and jointing, bodies suggesting multiple axes of symmetry intersecting in ways that strained the mind. Their surfaces were a shifting mosaic of dark, iridescent chitin and patches of the same fibrous parchment-like material as the Libram. They had no discernible faces, only clusters of sensory organs that glowed with the same sickly light as the book's glyphs. They moved with a terrifying fluid grace, flowing into the room rather than walking, their multi-jointed limbs folding and unfolding silently. They didn't attack, they observed. They gathered around Lowell, their presence radiating a profound, indifferent cold. One larger than the others, its form suggesting a disturbing blend of mantis and crystalline structure, extended a limb ending in several fine, articulated points. It didn't touch Lowell, but hovered over the Libram. The glyphs on the page flared brighter, pulsing in sync with the faint, rhythmic clicking that emanated from the creature's thorax. Lowell's remaining human jaw worked, producing only a dry, clicking rattle. His chitinous hand, now more claw than anything human, twitched towards the book. The creature observed this, its cluster of eyes glowing with cold, intellectual interest. It emitted a series of complex clicks and whistles, a sound that resonated deep in Lowell's transformed bones. The whispers in his mind swelled into a deafening chorus, no longer words but pure concepts, diagrams of dissolution, schematics of cosmic molting. The lead creature reached out, not to Lowell, but into him. Its articulated limb passed through the air above his thorax, and where it passed, reality itself seemed to warp. Lowell's carapace began to unfold, not break, but peel back along seams that hadn't been there moments before, revealing not organs but glimpses of swirling non-Euclidean space, filled with impossible colors and geometries. It wasn't painful. It was a revelation. A terrifying, sanity-shattering unveiling. He saw it, the vast, indifferent tapestry of the cosmos. The architects, not beings, but fundamental forces given sentience, vast beyond comprehension, weaving realities like spiders spin webs, discarding them when they no longer served their inscrutable purpose. He saw Earth, a fragile, temporary knot in the fabric, slated for dissolution in the great unfolding. He saw himself, Alastair Lowell, not as a man, but as a vessel, a focal point for the process initiated by the Libram. He was the catalyst, the first stitch pulled in the unraveling of his world. His consciousness, already frayed, dissolved into the cosmic revelation. The last vestige of Professor Alastair Lowell wasn't fear, but a profound, crushing understanding of his own terrifying insignificance and his horrifying role. He wasn't becoming a monster. He was becoming part of the monstrous process itself, a tool in the indifferent machinery of entities for whom humanity was less than dust. The creatures in the room clicked and whistled amongst themselves, a sound like stones grinding in a void. They observed the unfolding vessel, the human shell, now almost entirely shed, revealing a pulsating nexus of warped space and nascent alien energy. The Libram's light pulsed brighter, bathing the study in its sickly radiance. The lead creature made a final, complex gesture. The nexus that was once Lowell flared intensely and then collapsed inwards with a sound like tearing silk. Where Lowell had sat, there was nothing, not even ash, just a distortion in the air, a lingering cold spot, and the overpowering smell of ozone and deep, ancient earth. The Libram lay closed on the desk, the sigil on its cover dull once more. The impossible creatures flowed soundlessly out of the shattered doorway, melting into the unnatural shadows of the Arkham night, as if they had never been. In Lowell's study, only the notebooks remained. The insane geometries he'd drawn now seemed to shift subtly on the pages, the lines deepening, the angles becoming sharper, more real. And on the floor, near the desk, a single long strip of pale, translucent skin, desiccated and forgotten, slowly crumbled into gray dust. The process had begun. The great unfolding was no longer just whispered in the wind. It had found its first anchor point in Arkham. The molting of the world had commenced, and Professor Lowell was merely the first, unfinished draft in an incomprehensible cosmic manuscript. The silence left behind wasn't empty. It was the silence of held breath, the pause before the rending of a universe's skin.